Under Kevin Costner's Yellowstone contract, there was an unspoken provision. He gained influence that the studio had always wished he would never have. Attempts to break him persisted for a long time. They put the scripts on hold. Their filming plans were rescheduled. The most degrading method of eliminating his persona was even being considered. However, Costner was safeguards that were unknown to them. Everything fell apart as soon as he used it. It was only the beginning of what he disclosed in that last Instagram video. The true reason he would never come back has to do with secrets that could ruin careers. Linwood, California is the site of Kevin Michael Costner's birth on January 18, 1955. His dad, Bill, worked his way up from ditch digger to Southern California utilities executive. Working hard to get ahead is a timeless theme, and Edison showed it. Kevin inherited Sharon Ray's compassionate perspective after seeing firsthand the hardships endured by low-income families in the course of her work. Due to his father's career advancement at the power business, Kevin spent his boyhood in a constantly shifting household. Kevin said he felt like an army kid since every promotion entailed moving, perpetually the fresh face in the class. His childhood and adolescence were spent in Linwood and Compton, respectively, returning to Orange County after attending school in Ventura and Visalia. He was a member of the Visalia marching band while attending Met Whitney High School. He expressed feelings of insecurity and anxiety due to the frequent upheaval, claiming that he had to start over and establish new acquaintances all the time, which sapped his confidence. However, he developed a keen eye for detail and an intense capacity for empathy as a result of the ordeal, which would later inform his acting. Even though Kevin displayed an unexpected artistic side despite his academic struggles and frequent labeling as a poor student. Whether it was football, basketball, or baseball, he was a standout athlete. Regardless, he was just 5 feet, 2 inches tall when he finished high school at the age of 18. He was a member of the First Baptist Church Choir, a poet, and a student of the piano. His hobbies allowed him to express himself creatively in ways that others closest to him were unaware of. He paddled down rivers that Lewis and Clark had explored that same year after constructing his own boat. On an earlier journey to the Pacific, Clark had also gone. He loved American history and the frontier spirit, and it reflected in his daring adventure. The 1962 film How the West Was Won only served to amplify these feelings. But he repressed a lot of his creative energy since he was a young man in 1970s California who felt compelled to conform. Kevin completed his secondary education in 1973 at Villa Park High School in California. He and his teammate Dennis Burt played baseball there. After enrolling at California State University, Fullerton, and graduating with a BA in business in 1978, he immediately joined the Delta Chi fraternity and seemed to be heading in the direction of a secure career. Having survived tough times themselves, his parents valued stable employment highly. Kevin distinctly recalled the counsel given by his father. As long as you refuse to allow anyone outwork you, he will never be able to steal your job. This sage advice was received by Kevin at the time, certain that a career in business was in his future. His marriage to Cindy Silva, his undergraduate sweetheart, that same year marked the beginning of what appeared to be a conventional middle-class life for the couple. Secretly, Kevin began attending acting courses 5 nights a week during his final year at Cal State Fullerton, something that few people knew about. Including Cindy, he kept it a secret. Rumpelstiltskin, a university production, was even an audition for him. He was enthralled even if he was not cast. He seemed to be preparing for a career in business, but his secret life revealed that he was really taking acting seriously. After getting married in 1978, Kevin and Cindy went on a honeymoon to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. All of their possessions had to be crammed into one suitcase because they were short on funds and had to take a $8 bus from Los Angeles International Airport to Anaheim upon their return. Cindy was there for the youth. Collaborated by working in Delta Airlines marketing, while Kevin secretly yearned for a Hollywood role. Their 16-year marriage came to an end in a notoriously pricey divorce settlement of $80 million in 1994, perhaps the most costly in Hollywood history. The journey back home was the highlight of that honeymoon. Just a few rows away, Kevin saw the renowned Richard Burton sitting. Kevin, who was 23 years old at the time, snatched up the seats that Burton had purchased for his privacy. Guts to go up to him. He whispered in admission. Even though you're a famous actor, your many marriages and dramatic life have thwarted my acting dreams. Does an actor always lead that kind of life? I long for a life devoid of unnecessary drama. You have green eyes, Burton told him after taking a look at him. I believe you'll be all right. My eyes are green. We talked for approximately 20 minutes, and Kevin felt a strong yet subtle want for encouragement. Kevin and Cindy sat on their one luggage as they awaited their bus at the curb after the plane touched down. Suddenly, Burton's limo pulled up alongside them. Down rolled the tinted window, and out leaned Burton, a plane. Written communication. May you be blessed. Afterwards, the vehicle sped off. Even though Kevin would never meet him again, that instant haunted him. Kevin had a short stint in 1978 after graduating as a marketing executive. However, the position was short-lived. The work prevented him from attending acting lessons and auditions, and he soon came to the realization that a career in corporate America was not his calling. He confessed that he had kept his acting commitment a secret from Cindy until that point. Quickly, he secured a position as stage manager at Hollywood's Raleigh studios, enabling him to remain immersed in the profession even as he pursued his education. He drove a truck, worked on fishing boats, built houses, and even guided tourists around Hollywood to make ends meet. Even a little acting part helped them get through those tough years, and Cindy was there for him the whole while. He made his film debut in the 1981 release Sizzle Beach, USA, which was shot in 1978 and 1979. The low-budget romantic comedy, particularly the sex sequences, embarrassed Costner to the point that he attempted to purchase the rights to prevent its airing. In 1986, the firm re-released it to capitalize on his rising star power after first declining. By 1993, it had become a cult classic and had even made an appearance on Mystery Science Theater 3000. When he played Jake in Lawrence Kasdan's 1985 Western Silverado, his career took a dramatic turn. When Kevin's sequences were mostly removed from The Big Chill 2 years ago, Kasdan assured him that he would have a good role in the film. Indeed, he did provide. Even though Silverado included Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, Danny Glover, and Jeff Goldblum, Kevin's performance as a dynamic and unpredictable gunfighter was the showstopper. A total of $32 was bagged by the picture. It grossed almost $2 million in its 1,190 theater runs. Even if it didn't do very well, Kevin's magnetism was immediately noticed by reviewers and industry insiders. It nearly didn't happen in 1987, but Kevin Costner finally broke through. Neither of the parts that would later make him famous were his initial choices. Not wanting to be stereotyped as a lawman, Don Johnson, then famous for Miami Vice, refused to play the starring part of Elliot Ness in The Untouchables. Just like Brian De Palma, Steven Spielberg and Lawrence Kasdan were able to convince director Brian De Palma to give the relatively unknown actor a go with Costner. It turned out to be a profitable gamble. With that, The Untouchables made $106.2 million throughout the globe and garnered 4 nominations for the Academy Awards. Costner was thrust into the spotlight when Sean Connery took up the award for Outstanding Supporting Actor. He also shone that year that he wasn't stuck in a one-hit wonder persona. His character, Lieutenant Commander Tom Farrell, was performed by him and Gene Hackman in this Cold War thriller. With a meta score of 77 and a final score of 7, the picture was remarkably successful. One rating on IMDb from almost 52,000 voters, demonstrating to viewers that he effortlessly transitioned between psychological thrillers and criminal dramas. He became one of Hollywood's most desirable performers and laid the groundwork for his late 1980s supremacy after a year of 2 huge studio triumphs. He tackled the project of Bull Durham in 1988, a picture that was almost never produced. Every major studio turned down writer-director Ron Shelton's script, yet, twice in a row, no one was willing to take the chance, despite Costner's excitement for the story. A meager $6 to $9 million was eventually enough to produce the picture. It became a cultural phenomenon, surprising everyone, and made more than $50 million in North America. Its production cost was more than 8 times that. And it went on from there. When asked to select the best sports film of all time, Sports Illustrated ultimately settled on number 1. According to two sources, it was listed at number 55 on Bravo's 100 Funniest Movies list and number 97 on the American Film Institute's 100 Years of Silliness. Among the 53 best-reviewed sports films, Rotten Tomatoes even placed it first. In 1989, Field of Dreams was made possible by the popularity of Bull Durham. These films, together with his subsequent works, established his baseball trilogy. For what? The fact that Hollywood almost passed on two of the most adored baseball films of all time is what makes this story so extraordinary. Some of the most iconic sports movies of the period might not have been made had Costner not persisted. Costner was prepared to take on roles outside of film by 1990. He co-founded TIG Productions with Jim Wilson, a producer. There was purpose behind the timing. During the pinnacle of his being famous, Costner desired to have say over the stories he narrated. The grandiose Dances with Wolves was their initial undertaking. Costner and Wilson were bold to take the chance as major studios were unwilling to support it. Before they even had a studio deal, they sold the foreign rights, which financed 40% of the expenditure. Just weeks before filming began, this made Orion Pictures negotiate from a position of weakness. The majority. Most importantly, Costner made sure that no one could make changes to the film without his permission by acquiring final cut rights. Almost no first-time director had that kind of influence. Dances with Wolves was the most risky part. When the $15 to $22 million budget started to run low, Costner stepped in with $3 million of his own to keep the project afloat. As a jab at the 1980s disaster that was Heaven's Gate, which had decimated United Artists, the project was dubbed Kevin's Gate by the Hollywood elite. 4 months of filming were shot in the brutal South Dakota and Wyoming landscapes. Doris Leader-Charge of Syntegleska University translated lengthy passages of Lakota's speech that appeared in the film. Studios were so pessimistic about its potential audience engagement that Warner Brothers declined to release it. The nearly 4-hour Western on Native American culture required Costner to put his own assets up for collateral and convince financiers who were worried about the show's reception. The gamble was successful at last. In 1991, during the 63rd Academy Awards, Dances with Costner was named Best Director and Best Picture among Wolves' 12 nominations, which she went on to win 7 times. Only 3 people in Academy history have won Best Director for a debut feature. He became the third of those people. This film is one of just a few of Westerns to win Best Picture, with 1931's Simon, 1992's Unforgiven, and 2007's No Country for Old Men. The Library of Congress decided to preserve it because of its cultural and historical importance, and it went on to win the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture. Then, not long after that, Prince of Costner proved in Thieves that her star power could withstand negative criticism. With $25, the film opened $6 million over its opening weekend in June 1991 and eventually made $390,000. Budgeted between $48 to $60 million, reaching 5 million people globally. Skeptics were harsh. Roger Ebert rated it 2 stars and said it was a gloomy take on the old story. The Times of Los Angeles made fun of Costner for his lack of an English accent and even singled out a scene where Robin supposedly strolled 560 meters in a single evening. Regardless, critics and viewers alike praised it, and it received a perfect score on the Cinema Score. After Terminator 2, Judgment Day, it was the year's second highest grossing picture. Nobody saw The Bodyguard coming when it opened on November 25, 1992. Nobody anticipated it would have such a profound impact on Hollywood. The original script, written in the 1970s for Steve McQueen but long since forgotten, was the inspiration for the film. When Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston brought it to life, it had already become a legendary romantic thriller. In an unexpected turn of events, the film released on the same day as Disney's Aladdin, which earned over $41 million globally. It remained in the top 10 for a whole month and made about $122 million in North America. The film, however, wasn't without its share of surprises. The soundtrack by Whitney Houston was the one that really conquered the globe. It became the best-selling film score of all time with sales of over 45 million copies worldwide. With 831,000 copies sold in a single week in December 1992, the album shattered every record set since Billboard started electronic monitoring. With a staggering 2 million views, her song, I Will Always Love You, broke all previous records. 1 million copies sold, with 577,000 sold in the first 24 hours alone. The album became the first to sell over 1 million copies in a single week when it moved 1 million copies, and it remained at number 1 for 20 weeks between December 1992 and May 1993. In January of 1993, there were 6.06 million units. Costner took a risk with his career the following year, basking in the glow of his unprecedented success. For A Perfect World, released in 1993, he collaborated with Clint Eastwood. Steven Spielberg, who was in charge of Jurassic Park, had previously declined the project. Because he didn't want to deal with the pressure of playing two roles, Eastwood chose to direct instead of acting. But Costner saw the potential in resurrecting Eastwood and collaborated with John Lee Hancock, the screenplay, for weeks to flesh out Eastwood's persona. Instead than attempting to elevate his own character, he aimed to offer Eastwood a part that was rich with atonement and emotional complexity. The bet paid off. After being enticed, Eastwood and the director collaborated on a picture that made $135 million on a global scale. For displaying an emotional range that many had not anticipated, critics lauded Costner's performance. Costner wasn't simply a celebrity back then. When it came to Hollywood performers, he was among the highest paid. He made $20 to $30 million, including profits, from his deal with The Bodyguard. 2 years prior, the Prince of Thieves, Robin Hood, had bestowed upon him. A savvy back-end deal yielded an additional $40 million. In 1995, he was still making $14 million, despite the fact that Waterworld was a difficult production. Those kinds of sums were only available to a select few performers in the early 90s. Studios were prepared to offer him enormous salaries and creative freedom because they knew his name alone could sell tickets around the world. The cost of this triumph was high. Costner gained fame for his meticulousness and his determination to oversee practically every facet of a picture. He had profound, taking part in writing, editing, and conceptualization. He came clean about his reluctance to allow anyone to make modifications behind his back, saying that he believed the picture and its viewers would be let down if the story wasn't given its due. Those around him may find his meticulousness draining, but his record speaks for itself. On The Bodyguard, the love tension that the audience believed in was created by his insistence for emotional honesty and authenticity. But behind the scenes, his private life started to fall apart. Cindy Silva and Kevin Costner's 16-year marriage ended in divorce in 1994. One of the biggest settlements in Hollywood history, at $80 million, was reached. Annie, Lily, and Joe were born into their family after they met in college, long before he became famous. He lost a lot of money and felt unstable after his divorce. He came to terms with the fact that it was a really trying time for him afterwards. When Waterworld came out in 1995, things were already rough. Budgeted at $65 million, it soared to an astounding $175 million, becoming the most costly picture of all time. Due to factors such as equipment failures and wildly fluctuating weather, filming on the open ocean was fraught with interminable delays. The production's famed troubles began with Costner's clash with director Kevin Reynolds. The film was considered a flop despite earning $264 million globally due to its astronomical production expenses. It was a sign of Hollywood excess, and critics and the industry both found it funny. Costner acknowledged that year that he was experiencing his most difficult year to date. The agony of his marriage's end and seeing Waterworld's demise were topics of his candid discussions. The sensation, he said, was like a string of catastrophes had happened all at once. Because of the divorce, he could only spend half as much time with his children, which he felt was a significant setback. Almost immediately after, he started an ill-fated romance with Bridget Rooney, the star of the show and one of the famed Rooney siblings. You are viewing the Pittsburgh Steelers. When she announced she was pregnant and insisted Costner was the father, their affair made headlines. When years of denial, Costner finally admitted paternity to his son Liam in 2002 when a DNA test was ordered by a judge. In subsequent years, he set up a visiting rights program and a trust fund. Months of rumors had already been stoked by the controversy. The Postman, a picture that Costner directed, produced, and starred in 1997, was one of his most daring decisions to that point. He was so sure it would be a hit that he invested a large portion of his personal fortune, $80 million, into it. On the contrary, it bombed, grossing just $20 million globally. Critics panned it for its lengthy running time and preachy plot, and the fact that it was released during Christmas in opposition to Titanic only served to heighten the disappointment. The Postman's 1998 Razzie Award sweep, including Worst Picture, Worst Actor, and Worst Director, was the pinnacle of the humiliation. The man who had been the most bankable star in Hollywood suddenly became a punchline. But Costner wasn't through yet. His 2003 film Open Range co-starred Robert Duvall, in which he also served as director. The critically acclaimed, low-budget Western demonstrated that he could still make pictures with substance. It proved that Costner could bounce back from previous disappointments and made over twice as much as its budget, while it wasn't a blockbuster. More supporting roles became available to him in the late 90s and early aughts, and he gradually restoring his standing in society. His versatility was on full display in Mr. Brooks, The Guardian, The Upside of Anger, and 13 Days. Re-establishing himself as a serious actor, he had departed from his role as the unstoppable leading man of the early 1990s. It was already unbelievable when Kevin Costner's massive Emmy win for Hatfields and McCoys happened, but the fact that it did was even more astounding. A miniseries airing on the History Channel chronicled the story of a renowned American family dispute, which attracted 14 viewers. 3.0 million viewers for the series finale, shattering basic cable records. Bill Paxton, who played Costner's challenger in the series, was actually Costner's major competitor, which added an extra layer of surprise to the triumph. In Sherlock, he had to contend with Benedict Cumberbatch, and in Game, he had to overcome Woody Harrelson. But nobody could turn a blind eye to his portrayal of Ant's Devil Hatfield. For Costner, the victory was a watershed moment. It proved that, after decades in the film industry, he could still dominate television, which set the stage for subsequent events. With the arrival of Yellowstone came the next phase. The show nearly didn't materialize at all in the beginning. It was rejected by HBO after Taylor Sheridan pitched it. Paramount Network, a network in dire need of its first big hit, was the eventual home for it. The meteoric rise of Yellowstone to the position of most-watched cable show was completely unexpected. Launching in 2018, it sparked a whole franchise, with sequels in 1883 and 1923 and more in the works. The show's popularity continued to rise, and in 2024, when Season 5 premiered, it drew 21 million viewers. Being at the epicenter of a cultural phenomena at the age of 63 proved that Costner's career was far from over. Another landmark was set when he succeeded on Yellowstone. Costner was named the year's finest actor in a television drama by the Golden Globes in 2023. However, the feeling was one of mixed emotions. The ceremony was missed since he was unable to attend due to being stranded in Santa Barbara due to severe weather. In a subsequent emotional online letter to followers, he thanked Regina Hall, who had accepted the honor on his behalf. His win made history, as he became the first actor hailing from Yellowstone to get a Golden Globe. At last, the show was getting the credit it deserved from the Hollywood award circuit. His career was taking off at the time. His private life was likewise under scrutiny. Costner was a stay-at-home dad to his 3 kids with Christine Baumgartner. In preparation for a Western-themed film, he gave his son Hayes the name and even cast him in a supporting role in his ambitious movie Horizon. With their several mansions, private jets, and extravagant vacations, their life was as extravagant as it could get in Hollywood. Their marriage was in disarray, though, beneath all the glitz and glamour. Baumgartner initiated the divorce process in 2023 following 18 times spent in each other's company. Child support, property, and even household goods were all points of contention in the ensuing heated dispute, which lasted for months. A contentious issue arose when Christine sought child support of about $250,000 per month, and court records exposed the couple's lavish lifestyle. The divorce was finalized in early 2024, but the emotional toll and financial strain it had on Costner influenced his choices about his job for a long time. He refused to give up on his passion project, an American story called Horizon, which was a major source of that pressure. For his four-part Western epic, Costner was willing to take greater risks than the average performer. He did more than merely put $20 million in, contrary to popular belief. He put $38 million of his own money and mortgaged his $50 million Santa Barbara estate. He spent years trying to find investors when Disney pulled out, assuring Khan's backers that he had given the picture his all. The overall budget soared past $100 million, making the gamble absolutely jaw-dropping. It was a daring step that revealed not just his confidence in the initiative but also his willingness to accept massive risks. Simultaneously, his connection with Paramount and Taylor Sheridan was deteriorating. Conflicts between his work on Horizon and scheduling issues with Yellowstone reached a boiling point in 2023. According to Costner's interview with Deadline, he felt misled by the studio. It was discovered that the attorneys had rendered all communication futile. According to reports, Costner only promised 1 week of filming, but he insisted that Sheridan was to blame for the delays in screenplay writing. As Costner insisted on final say over screenplays and got a contract provision that forbade the dishonorable death of John Dutton, suspicions mounted. The show's original plan for a lengthier run was shortened to finish with Season 5 due to the toxic nature of the dispute. In 2024, when Horizon Chapter 1 was eventually released to theaters, the consequences were disastrous. The film's $29 million box office take belies all his hard work and risk. Over $1 million globally, well below the $100 million goal. There was a significant decline in its second weekend, and it had problems performing abroad. The second chapter was even finished but delayed by Warner Brothers. Costner conceded that the project's success was crucial to its survival, but viewers weren't interested. One of the largest personal financial losses ever experienced by Costner in Hollywood occurred because critics felt the 3-hour Western was out of touch with modern tastes. Then an era came to a close with the Instagram video. Costner surprised millions of viewers on June 21, 2024, when he told fans, "I won't be returning. I'll see you at the movies." He ended his relationship with John Dutton and the Yellowstone franchise. Reports had hinted at a potential comeback only a few days prior. Thus, the abrupt immutability. Considerably more severely. Timed to coincide with Horizon, the announcement was both emotional and well-crafted, ensuring that he remained the center of attention. He acknowledged in his divorce court that he would be giving up $12 to $15 million each season from the show as a result. It was the final act of the part that had defined his late career and thrust him into the uncharted territory of indie filmmaking.